Hello and welcome to Capacity TV. I'm delighted to be joined today by Byron from SEACOM. Good morning.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
So Byron, how have you seen SEACOM develop and progress since its network went live in 2009?
When SEACOM launched in July 2009, there were really no cables connecting East Africa to the rest of the world. So really all internet access was provided via satellite, so it was very slow, somewhat unreliable, but most of all very, very expensive. Probably some of the most expensive prices per meg you'd see in the world. So since 2009, things have really progressed with our cable and a few other cables that launched thereafter, to the point where now you have a much lower cost per meg and you have a lot more capacity in the marketplace, which obviously has a lot of follow-on effects to the economies of East Africa.
A lot of people talk about us being in an innovative marketplace. How are you evolving in such a time?
Since SEACOM launched, really it was, as I mentioned, about dollars per meg. It was really about people getting connectivity to the rest of the world, and simply put, that's all they were looking for. I think since then, the market is evolving and becoming like other parts of the world, where things like service quality, reliability, and innovation into new services and the kinds of services you can offer are becoming more important. So really Africa is kind of joining the world economy and joining the global internet. So I think, people now don't look just for dollars per meg. They look for making sure that that capacity or the connectivity that they have is up all the time, that the service quality they get is on par with other parts of the world, or at least getting there. And that we have the kind of platforms that can offer the various types of services, scalability, flexibility, how you design and route your traffic that takes place in other parts of the world.
Byron, you mentioned new services and delivering new services. What new developments and markets can we see from SEACOM in 2014?
Yeah, I think it's critical for network providers in Africa, and particularly for SEACOM, to offer more resiliency and reliability in the network. So one of the fundamental things we've been doing is getting capacity in other cable systems and connecting those other cables into our core network platforms. So really a lot of the work we've been doing is really getting network reliability in place so that we can offer better services to our customers. At the same time, we're deploying new equipment on the platform to allow that network, those network elements, to enable more service platforms and a better quality of service, better routing, and as well as some new services that Africa had not seen in the past. And finally, I think we've brought a lot of capacity to African countries, particularly on the east coast of Africa, that really it's a challenge now to get inland into Africa. So I think what we'll be seeing in 2014 is some investments to really take the high-speed capabilities and network quality that we have internationally that connects the coast inland into Africa. So we'll be opening some new POPs. We've recently launched Cape Town in 2013, but in 2014 we'll be expanding into Kampala in Uganda, and also into Djibouti.
What do you think are the biggest challenges for you going inland into Africa?
I think the fundamental challenges of developing markets and emerging markets like most African nations is that the underlying infrastructure where you might put fiber, for example, roads, etc., getting that basic infrastructure in place such that fiber can be deployed and then electronics on that fiber to manage the networks. So there's a lot of activity going on. And there is fiber available. I think it's the challenge really is to light that fiber and making sure that capacity and the services can get both to residential users, broadband users, as well as to businesses.
You talk about obviously developing inland, which is probably less competitive than people building cables at the moment, or subsea cables around Africa and into the Middle East. I mean, how competitive do you think the market is at the moment in the subsea space, and do you welcome new cables? Do you think there's a need for these?
Certainly we welcome competition. SEACOM is a private cable company, a network service provider really, and there are other cables that we utilize to build a better service for our customers. So obviously more cables, generally speaking, the better. However, I think that cables, if they are going to get built, need to add value. And have to have a value proposition in themselves. It can't just be another cable on the same route. But things like added diversity, lower latency, all of these might be reasons to add new cables into the marketplace. But today you see that South Africa is served really by 5 high-speed cables. East Coast has 2 to 3 cables, depending on which countries on the East Coast. And on the West Coast, you have 2 to 3 cables. So what you're also seeing is the fact that some of these cables are now being put together into a ring. SEACOM offers now a ring product that actually offers protection on East and West Coast from anywhere that we land and connect our customers to. So I think that that balance seems to be, there's enough, I would say, adequate resiliency in the international transmission paths. The challenge really is getting into the markets and getting into the key cities and getting to customers with that same kind of reliability and diversity.
Byron, the client base that SEACOM works with, how has that changed over the past couple of years? I mean, from maybe carrier to carrier to carrier to OTT to enterprise customers. I mean, how do you see that client base changing and how important is it?
Traditionally, SEACOM has been serving African service providers, so mobile network operators, ISPs, traditional carriers, really getting from Africa out. So really getting access to the global internet, and most of that flows go into Europe. But what we're seeing more and more now is everything from global carriers wanting to come in to support their multinational customers, but also the major content players, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Yahoos, all interested to bring some of their content and services onto the continent in Africa and to serve customers there. So I think that you're seeing that change, which is some of that content that used to only be accessed either in Europe or the United States now coming onto the continent of Africa, as those service providers really want to give their customers a better experience by putting that closer to where those customers are.
Byron, final question. SEACOM is working in the Middle East region or working with Middle East operators. How important is that as a market for you?
Well, the SEACOM cable goes up around the Horn of Africa into the Red Sea and then crosses Egypt. So we're obviously, our main transmission path goes through the Middle East. And I believe that as Middle Eastern countries deregulate, more competition comes in, and as the African economy continues to develop, I think certainly SEACOM will be in a good position to kind of assist the flows of information and data and traffic between the markets. And I think that time is coming. We're beginning to see more and more interest from Middle Eastern operators to come into Africa. Traditionally the flow of traffic from Africa has been Africa to Europe, but that's beginning to change. You're starting to see traffic and transmission patterns getting into Asia as Asian investment comes in, but also into the Middle East. So I think in the future the Middle East will become more important just as a trading partner with sub-Saharan Africa as well.
Byron, thank you very much for joining us today on Capacity TV.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.